Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. A massive opportunity for this Michigan program over the next couple of weeks on the recruiting trail. And a lot of our conversations around this Michigan program have been kind of catered to what we're hearing out of fall camp. And over the next couple of weeks on the recruiting trail, this could mean a lot for Michigan in this 2025 cycle. I want to talk about a few top targets that are either trending for Michigan or Michigan is certainly in the running for. Kind of talk about two different things. One, where does Michigan sit in some of these recruitments? But I think more importantly, how do they fit into Michigan's class in 2025, where you look at Michigan in 2025 sitting as the 14th best class in the country? I think every opportunity in the world to be a top 10 class in this 2025 cycle, which would be a massive storyline for Sherrone Moore, his first recruiting cycle, having a top 10 class in the country. I think that's only something Sherrone Moore can build on over the next couple of years. Really excited to get into this conversation. Probably the last, sole Michigan recruiting episode that we're going to do until the college football season. Obviously, we'll break down the commitments if and when they happen. Really excited. Before we do, and as always, just want to say thank you to you guys and to the Michigan fans. It's been a blast talking this program, specifically on the recruiting trail. There's been so many Michigan fans who've been tuning in the middle of the summer to talk recruiting. It's something I love talking about. And as a Michigan fan, love talking about Michigan on the recruiting trail. Can't thank you guys enough for rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. And without further ado, let's get into what I would probably describe as the crown jewel of this Michigan class in 2025. That's five-star offensive tackle Andrew Babalola. I think Michigan's in a good spot. And I think why I think Michigan's in a good spot was Andrew Babalola wanted to be already committed to a program at this point. And it sounded like Stanford all summer was the team to beat. And then Michigan came in really hard. And I think now that you see Andrew Babalola kind of continuing to back off the commitment day, kind of drag this process out, I think that tells us as Michigan fans that, hey, Michigan's probably in it a lot more than we thought Michigan would be in it probably 2 months ago when he was taking his official visits in the summer. I think secondly, this makes so much sense for Michigan and Andrew Babalola. You talk about some of those recruitments that it just seems like such an obvious partnership between the player and the program. That's it for Andrew Babalola in Michigan, where you look at the two most important things for Andrew Babalola on the recruiting trail: education, player development. You look at Michigan, obviously checks the box in the education department and obviously checks the box in the player development department. And you look at Andrew Babalola as a football player and say, hey, this is a former basketball player that has every single elite physical trait that you want and a star left tackle at the college football level. Just needs to get a little bit developed, just needs to put on a little bit more weight. What better program for Andrew Babalola to get that top-notch education and get that top-notch player development specifically on the offensive line than what this Michigan program can offer? Now, it sounds like it's coming down to Stanford, Michigan, maybe Auburn being that kind of dark horse. This seems like a recruitment that Michigan should be able to get done. And I think on top of that, you have a couple of different, wild cards in this recruitment that certainly could play for Michigan. One, Sherrone Moore being from Kansas. Obviously, that relationship, having Andrew Babalola be comfortable coming up north to Ann Arbor, that's certainly something that I think helps Michigan in this recruitment. I think secondly, you had a couple of guys who were Stanford offensive linemen that chose Stanford out of high school and decided to transfer to Michigan over the last couple of years. Drake Nugent and obviously Miles Hinton, who's still within this Michigan program. If I'm Sherrone Moore, I am using that. I'm getting Miles Hinton on the phone with Andrew Babalola and kind of telling him, hey, this is what you get at Stanford. I'm not going to rag on the program, but this is why I decided to transfer to Michigan in the transfer portal, because Michigan kind of offers some of this stuff that, Stanford might not offer. And so I look at this recruitment, and as it kind of continues to go along, as it continues to kind of push back this decision timeline, you kind of feel better and better about Michigan's opportunity and chance in this recruitment. Next guy we got to talk about, four-star wide receiver Andrew Marsh. This has been a guy that I have consistently banged the table for this Michigan program, but quite frankly, before Michigan was even in the running for wide receiver Andrew Marsh, I loved him at USC. I thought it was a great fit at Texas as well. Andrew Marsh is one of my favorite wide receivers in this 2025 class, and it comes down to, how polished Andrew Marsh is as a wide receiver. I think he'd be the most talented wide receiver that Michigan has landed on the recruiting trail since probably Donovan Peoples-Jones. And you look at Andrew Marsh and say, he's probably a better pure wide receiver than DPJ was coming out of high school, where Donovan Peoples-Jones was kind of this freak show athlete that was really big, that was really fast, maybe not the most polished wide receiver. I look at Andrew Marsh and say, this kid checks every box in terms of route running, in terms of creating separation, in terms of what he can do after the catch, in terms of working vertically down the field. And I think what Michigan can sell Andrew Marsh is, hey, you commit to Michigan as a freshman, you're going to have every opportunity to be one of the guys in this Michigan wide receiver room immediately. You look at a lot of other programs that are in it for Andrew Marsh. I don't think there's a lot of other programs that can kind of sell Andrew Marsh being a guy, a featured part in this offense as a true freshman. And I think secondly, it's a massive recruitment for Michigan in terms of the future, in terms of the next couple of classes, where if you're Michigan, it's been no secret that there hasn't been a ton of wide receiver development and production within this Michigan offense over the last couple of years, although I think that's kind of a fallacy, because you look at Roman Wilson or Cornelius Johnson or Ronnie Bell, guys that have played wide receiver at Michigan who've gone on to the NFL. I do think there's this stigma around, hey, if you're an elite wide receiver, why would you go to this Michigan program? If you can land Andrew Marsh and have a very good freshman, sophomore year, I think it goes a long way in kind of flipping that narrative of, hey, if you're an elite wide receiver, why would you even consider going to Michigan? I think Andrew Marsh can be a guy that certainly can do that for this Michigan program. Next guy I want to shout out, this one is a little less intimate, right? Andrew Babalola, a guy that really could commit anytime. You look at Andrew Marsh, a guy that's committing August 20th. Nate Uwubo, a guy that doesn't have a commitment date, but it sounds like Michigan is either right in it for him or potentially the leader. You look at Nate Uwubo, I'd say the first thing is these are the kind of linebackers that Michigan has been valuing out of the recruiting trail over the last couple of cycles. We've had this conversation a lot where you go back to Michigan in 2020 or 2019 or 2018. You know, we've had some good linebackers at Michigan, but they weren't premier athletes. And when we went up against the Ohio State offenses, the offenses that were really going to test that speed on the defensive side of the football, that's when we struggled the most. You know, what was that big transition that Michigan has seen on the defensive side of the football? We're just a little bit more athletic, especially at that second level, right? Guys like Junior Colson who can fly around. You look at some of the recruits Michigan has taken, guys like Cole Sullivan. These guys are just much faster. They're better operating in space. Nate Uwubo is one of those guys. Although he's not necessarily the biggest at 6'1.5", 205, he is rocked up. He plays extremely fast. Plays with his hair on fire. You talk about sideline to sideline speed. You talk about what he can do in coverage. There's so many different things you can use with the Nathaniel Uwubo. And I think, secondly, it's a really good fit in this Wink Martindale defense, where we've said this all along. I mean, this Michigan defense wants versatility, guys who can do a lot of different things. You turn on the film of Nathaniel Uwubo, this is a guy that's playing off-ball linebacker. He'll play the overhang linebacker spot, almost a little bit of a nickel role at times. He'll rush the passer off the edge. And there's so many different things you can do with Nathaniel Uwubo. That's exactly what Michigan's looking for in some of these second-level defenders. Michigan, Notre Dame, Ohio State sounds to be the top three in this recruitment. And the last guy I want to talk about that I'm just going to continue to bang the table for, and that's Georgia cornerback commit Shamari Earls. At a point, it was between Georgia and Michigan. He ended up committing to Georgia, was formerly committed to South Carolina. Why I want to talk about Shamari Earls, I think late in this process, I think Michigan could continue to work their way in this recruitment. There's still communication between him and Lamar Morgan and Wink Martindale, but I think more importantly, Shamari Earls is one of those guys that I think can start immediately in the college football landscape. He's 6'2", he's almost 200 pounds, big, he's long, he's fast, he's physical. He's one of those guys that's not going to need that redshirt freshman year to kind of come up to speed at the college football level. What could Michigan, potentially sell Shamari Earls? I think it would be something like, hey, you can play early. Because you look at this Michigan cornerback room, Will Johnson, he's probably going to be playing in the NFL at this point 12 months from now. You look at a guy like Amir Hall, he's going to run out of eligibility. It's a cornerback room that outside of Jair Hill, I don't think there's any kind of guaranteed starters in 2025. You look at Georgia, they're still going to be really loaded. I mean, they've landed a couple of really talented cornerbacks already in 2025, but I think more importantly, you look at the 2024 class, the 2023 class, it was loaded with cornerback talent. Shamari Earls probably comes in and maybe even a scout team cornerback year one for Georgia. I think Michigan could kind of say, hey, you would be a guy that would probably get rotated in as a freshman at the cornerback position. That might mean something for a guy like Shamari Earls. So we'll kind of see how that plays out for Michigan over the next couple of weeks and months. But Michigan's only got one true cornerback, I should say, committed in the 2025 class. They'll probably want to take 3. I think Shamari Earls is a guy that you keep chipping away at because he's one of my favorite cornerbacks in this 2025 class. I think he'd be a great fit within this Wink Martindale defense. We'll close it there again. Sitting 14 in the country right now, I think it is a very real possibility that Michigan finishes a top 10 class in the 2025 cycle. We'll close it there. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later.